You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
من هناك لشوارزنيجر أوب، 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 أوب. ¡Gol!
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Good day, good night, and welcome to a historic day in Canadian, Mexican, and American soccer today. Yeah, we're going to talk about the Premier League weekend. We're going to talk about MLS and the Canadian review later on. But we start the show today by talking about a press conference happening later today. United States Soccer Federation, Mexican Soccer Federation, and the Canadian Soccer Federation are going to have a joint press conference later today to announce a joint bid for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. We might make it in. Canada might qualify for the World Cup that way. Maybe 2026, only 8 years away, and that would be amazing. And to talk about this tomorrow, we already have two great guests scheduled. Tom Marshall of the SPN and Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer, two of the most prominent journalists that covers American and Mexican soccer, will be on the show tomorrow to talk about the bid for the 2026 World Cup. What does it mean? Will Canada get games, or it's joint bid because will be game in US, there'll be game in Mexico, and Canada will take the ticket to go to the World Cup? Yeah, maybe that's how joint the bid will be. But a lot of reasoning behind the joint bid. Recent political change in the United States, recent policy change about immigration and visas are one of the reasoning behind the joint bid. FIFA will need some commitment by the United States to make sure that teams like Syria or teams like this, which right now they're not permitted to travel to the United States, citizens of those countries. So those are the type of commitment and guarantee that FIFA needs for them to allow some of those games to be in the United States. And that's one of the reasoning behind the joint bid, to make sure that CONCACAF gets that bid too. Is an idea. Canada wanted to bid for it. The United States wanted to bid for it as well. We've been talking about this on Soccer Today and Two Solitudes for the last 3 years, maybe, how 2026 was a CONCACAF. Like, it's a slam dunk for CONCACAF to have it. If you're looking at the rotation aspect, if you're looking at the last time CONCACAF had the World Cup in 1994, United States, Brazil won it that year. It's been a long time. It's a long time coming. And it would be a great launch pad for the beginning of, like, the Canadian Premier League will be there obviously in 2026, but it's going to help a lot. Like, the World Cup in 2026 could change the game in some part of the country. It could maybe launch soccer like in 1994 in the United States, but to the other level, to be talked about as an equal footing to the other big leagues in the country below where I am right now. So there's a lot of possibilities with the 2026 World Cup bid. And tomorrow we'll have a special roundtable segment with Tom Marshall and Jonathan Tannenwald to talk about the ramifications, to talk about what does it mean for U.S. soccer, for Mexican soccer. What's the positive, what's the negative of having a joint bid? And we'll watch carefully the press conference later on today. It's at 2 p.m. You'll be able to listen to it at some point. We'll try to get the recording up if it's possible, and you can always take a look on Canadian Soccer News tomorrow and later tomorrow night to have more detailed analysis of the announced joint bid that will take place today. All right, let's talk a little bit about Premier League before we move on to Major League Soccer and what happened in the weekend and eventually the Canadian review. Everton had a big victory on Sunday, 4-2 against Leicester at Goodison Park. But for Everton, what's surprising, it's Lukaku. Like after the game, when you're looking at all Lukaku's goals this season, yeah, Lukaku's a golden boot leader. Lukaku has 50.9% of the goals of Everton this season. That is crazy. That is a lot. Is it a Lukaku dependence? And when you're looking at the table where Everton are not necessarily as high as they would have liked, but when you look at the teams ahead of them, they're kind of where they should fit in. And the only way they'll bridge that sixth, fifth gap to take over Arsenal or Man United is if that Lukaku dependence, not that you want the Lukaku to keep the same level of goal scoring because that's the reason why you're seventh in the league right now. But you kind of need a little more help. You kind of need a secondary high percentage goal scoring to have your team in the top five. That's what we've seen. When we think about Chelsea, there's players with a lot of goals, but it's distributed. It's not one, it's more than one, which means that the chances, the goal scoring chances, comes from more than one part of the field, more than one player contributes to those goal chances. When you have 50.9% of your goals scored, half of your goals scored by the same player. Yes, Lukaku is a poacher, but he can score different types of goal. But those chances are created similarly, and you kind of have a predictability, a dependence in your play that is dangerous for Everton at the highest level. And to really truly cross and break that glass ceiling right now that is below sixth and seventh, because Arsenal are struggling a little bit, but that glass ceiling to truly shatter it, Everton needs another goal scorer with high percentage in the goals for the team. Like they need a 50. Okay, fine, but I'll take a 40 and a 20 and 30%. I'll take a duo like this first. So for Everton, another prominent goal scorer will be needed to finally make a difference between the best of the rest outside of the big club in England or one of those good and big club in England. And that difference is more help up front to give a hand to Lukaku. So when Lukaku is not hot, the team itself doesn't suffer too much. Tottenham a statement win against Watford, yeah, at White Hart Lane 4-0. West Ham Swansea on Saturday. West Ham won, Swansea 0. Stoke City lost at the Britannia. Liverpool got the result on the road. Great for them. They continue to be talked about in the Champions League spot and maybe potentially a title run if Chelsea falters. What wasn't the case on Saturday. Chelsea 3, Bournemouth 1. Chelsea on the road getting their result here. Borough and Burnley 0-0. It doesn't help Borough. Borough is looking at the relegation almost straight in the face right now, and they needed the 3 points. They didn't get it. Another team that's looking at relegation is Sunderland. Haven't scored a goal in over 10 hours of play. Man United 3, Sunderland 0 at home for Sunderland, as they could not even generate like chances. It's a slump. Sunderland are maybe the one team that you can guarantee are going down right now. But yeah, Sunderland, it's a big difficulty. And we have the Monday night football game at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Crystal Palace, Arsenal. Can Crystal Palace get a needed result? Because, yeah, they had a surprise win against Chelsea, but they're still pretty damn close to relegation zone, only 3 points away from Swansea. The relegation battle is what's interesting right now in their Premier League. 20th with 20 points, Sunderland. 19th with 24 points, Borough. 18th with 28 points, Swansea. Now, the teams that are safe for now, on fire with Marco Silva as their new head coach for the last few months. Hull City, 30 points. Crystal Palace, 16th with 31. So you have 5 teams for 2 safe spots, or 5 teams for 3 relegation battle. Crystal Palace and Hull do have an advantage, but Crystal Palace has a very tough schedule ahead of them, facing big clubs for the rest of the season, basically. It's going to be tough for them to even get points. So if Swansea gets lucky and gets another result, same for Hull, then it might be difficult for Crystal Palace to keep the 16th spot because of their difficult schedule ahead of them. And that schedule looks something like this for Crystal Palace: Arsenal on Monday, Leicester next Saturday. It continues for Crystal Palace with Liverpool, and then Tottenham, and then for Palace, Man City. And then for Palace, you have Hull City that are on fire basically right now. And they finished the season against Man United. So there is a very, very possible and probable scenario that sees Crystal Palace get 0 points until the end of the season. And that would make them a relegation contender, probably in the 18th spot. I do see Hull and City get a few points. Borough and Sunderland are going down. Palace is not safe. They're playing top club for the rest of the season, and that will be very, very difficult for Palace. Good luck, Sam. Big Sam. You'll need it. We'll be back with some MLS talk.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Crazy weekend in Major League Soccer. Started Friday night. LA Galaxy won 2-0 at home against the Montreal Impact, but you can listen to the MLS postgame show that was recorded and live broadcasted last night to hear about all the results of the weekend in Major League Soccer. What I want to talk about today is the referee. Villarreal and Gunter. Lucky Gunter didn't cost a game to their team. But Villarreal did for the Montreal Impact. That phantom foul on Jermaine Jones. I've looked at it about 32 times now. It was 28 last time. Now it's 32. I still can't find it. I still can't find the foul. Never mind a yellow card. Never mind worthy of a red card. I still cannot find for the life of me where did Marco Donadel even touched or hit or elbowed, or he reacted like he got chopped in the throat. Donadel barely even touched Jermaine Jones. Oscar-worthy performance? Yeah. Well, what do we do about this? Charles Bowman on MLSsoccer.com mentions the heel turn for Jermaine Jones. Yeah, he's been a heel for a little while now, but he's been complaining lately about, the criticism on me. There's been some criticism on his U.S. men's national team play on MLSsoccer.com by different columnists over there, and that's what he's been basically outspoken about. Being, stop criticizing me when you're not criticize my fellow teammates at the same standards. And Jermaine Jones embracing the heel persona with that performance, with that acting job, with that exaggeration, that flop, that simulation, that dive. It was a dive. Let's get this out of the game. It's what do we do about this? Guntar, the referee, called another one, and I forget the game now. I think it was in the Toronto Atlanta game, I think. What do we do about this? Like, we got video we got video now. We got ways to eradicate those type of behaviors, and I'm not talking about the behavior of the referee. Everybody can be fooled if you angle of vision to the play, the speed of play. Everybody can get fooled pretty easily. But what do we do to get rid of this in the game? To get rid of diving at that level, where red card inducing dives? that changes the game, changes the tactic, changes how motivation gets people angry. What to do about this? Let us know at Kev Laramee. That's my Twitter. And you can follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/Kev Laramee. And as well, SportsPodNet and Soccer Today, SPN. By the way, you can get all the shows that we do here on sportspodcastingnetwork.com, available on iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Feedburner, Podbay Player, everywhere you get your podcast. Look for Sports Podcasting Network. So, Jermaine Jones and that dive. Will the disciplinary committee, MLS Disco, will they rescind the red card today? Yes, I say yes to the rescinding. Rescind them now, both of them, the Gunter one and the Villarreal one, called by those two referees. Please, those two are phantom fouls and need to be rescinded. Marco Donadel do not deserve to be suspended for the home opener versus Atlanta United. And I hope that the MLS Disciplinary Committee today issues a statement. Well, I think it's going to come out today or tomorrow, the official press release every week by the Disco. Hopefully, this time around, you will have a rescindication. Hopefully, Marco Donadel's red card will be rescinded. Now, the other great games yesterday that we had a snow game, the other apparition of the orange ball twice in the same season. Wow, that is unexpected to say the least, but we did have that in the weekend. RSL, 3 goals late in a Classico game because of the snow. So, Snow Classico, a weird game that it started off with a white ball and green pitch and finished off with a white pitch and orange ball. So, kind of always interesting to watch. It was a comedy of error. That's what happens when you have the snow. No stoppage time whatsoever. Baldemir Toledo looks at his watch at the exact 90th minute, blows his whistle, said, "There's no way I'm staying here 1 minute longer than I should be. I'm just going to change. My feet are wet. I'm cold. It's snowing. I need to change." And that's what we have seen. So that was quite interesting in Major League Soccer as well. Portland 3, Philly on the road 1. That was an interesting game as well. Darlington Nagbe becomes the all-time goal scorer leader for the Portland Timbers in Major League Soccer. So Darlington Nagbe, already a cult figure, cult hero, and legendary player for the Portland Timbers. Type of career with Valeria would include too. Those players will have their numbers retired. Those players will have a statue or something similar at Timbers Park, Timber Stadium in Portland. They will be honored whenever their careers are over. And Darlington Nagbe, still very, very young, has a chance to put this goal scoring all-time leader record out of reach for anybody ever if he stays with Portland for a long time. So that is another great, interesting thing. DC United got the win at home. And as much as the Toronto and Atlanta game was high quality, was great play, pace, you saw great skills by player to create great chances and create goals, 2 goals apiece. The New England Houston game was the exact opposite. Comedy of errors, ball bouncing, New England finding ways to score 2 goals off poaching goals, basically. And the worst performance by Houston this season. They looked like Houston we were expected to see earlier this season. So Houston with their worst game so far. New England kind of like their best, but New England is having a good beginning of the season under radar. And they're not flashy. They get things done sometimes, and they don't sometimes. But so far this season, they have been pretty decent. So it's not like they're struggling like the Montreal Impact, winless still to defeat 3 draws. Yeah, there's 3 draws, 3 points there. But hey, it's a tough beginning of the season, and you can listen later on this week to Off to It Works, where I will review this Montreal LA game from last Friday, but as well preview the Atlanta Montreal home opener this Saturday, the second home opener for the Montreal Impact, where they will open up Stade Saputo this time. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, it's the Canadian Review. You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. The Canadian Review on the Two Solitudes Soccer Podcast. And we're back on Up to It Works. No, it's not Up to It Works. It's Soccer Today. And it's the Canadian Review here. Formerly of the Two Solitudes Podcast, the legacy of the Two Solitudes Podcast, the Canadian Review now on Soccer Today. Let's start with Vancouver. Yes, they were the opponents of RSL in that classic game at the Riot Rio Tinto Stadium, a very snowy affair between Vancouver and Real Salt Lake. Vancouver weren't able to acclimatize a very different lineup, by the way, a very different formation for Carl Robinson, a different preferred lineup as well. The difficult turnaround for the last week and a half with the CCL game, with the big game deception against Tigres. It hasn't been easy over the last few weeks. Just roster selection. Major League Soccer hasn't made it easy on Vancouver this time around. Let's remember, when Montreal had the great results in the CCL in 2015, part of the mentality of Montreal, they were able to focus fully, 100%, on the CONCACAF Champions League, having 2 games postponed in that run, or 3, I think, 2 or 3. I would have to check, but off the top of my head, I know for sure 2 that gave them fully the focus on their CONCACAF Champions League duties. And Vancouver, having to split the duties between the 2 championships, between the 2 battlefronts, well, they faltered here once again, 3-0 against Real Salt Lake. It never looked easy in that game for Vancouver. We're seeing maybe fatigue with some of the players. It's not easy to get the ball to Montero. He's easily isolated, and he's maybe too high forward, too high up on the pitch. We see Montero, usually, if you're looking at his highlights with Seattle, he's dangerous from 30 to 15 yards in, and then his percentages dips a little bit. But when he's a little far from goal with the ball, he can score a cracker top corner. That's what we have seen in the past from Montero. And him being higher on the pitch this time with Vancouver seems he cannot necessarily use his favorite skills, his favorite ways to play. Players have tendencies, and one of the tendencies of Montero is to drop deep a little bit. And if he's the striker up top alone or with somebody else, if he drops down deep enough, then there'll be a lack of opportunities and movement created forward. And if he doesn't go deep enough, he's not going to have the ball. So there's that conundrum for Vancouver and Friendly Montero. But I think fatigue could have been seen on Vancouver's side in this game. It'll be important to see how they recover this week. Speaking of recovering, the Montreal Impact has a lot of work to do. Big week ahead of him of recovering, of hopefully a red card rescinded, For Donadell, hopefully he's available on Saturday. It's the Stade Saputo home opener versus one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference as we speak, Atlanta United. Atlanta United had a great performance versus Toronto. 2-2, the best team to go in BMO Field in a long time, according to Kurt Larson. And it is an expansion side, but let's drop the expansion label and tag right now. Atlanta are for real. Even without Joseph Martinez for the last 2 games, they have put a competitive showing forward and have scored 2 goals in this one against a very capable Toronto FC team that looked dangerous with the return of the goal scoring prolific Javinko, which opened up his account for 2017 in that game. But to go back to Montreal, they have a lot of recovering to do. They didn't have a lot of calls going their way in 2017. I'll give that. No easy games. Tough calls, tough cards. They didn't get the saves when they needed them. First goal against LA. Uh, you can blame it on the pitch. You can blame it on Evan Bush. You can blame it on the shot. You can blame it on the pace of the shot that it lacks. But look at the replay again multiple times. Evan Bush makes a type of stutter step or movement to his left, and when he sees when the shot is going to his right, then he dives. But he's already in a move. His momentum is going to the left to stop and re-jump on the other side. And once that happens, he slips. The grass just gets out of underneath his feet, and he is stuck there. And we see a Evan Bush not being able to jump basically further than like not even a foot, and he can't get to the ball that's really close to him, but because he lost his footing and couldn't get that power, that lift to jump, he wasn't able to go make that save, and that opened up. And the other goal later on, it's unfortunate as well. But for Montreal now, they find themselves in a hole where there's already a 4-point gaps between the 10th spot where they are in the Eastern Conference and the 9th spot. You need to stop the bleeding really quickly. You need to get a win, and you need to win against Atlanta. Because if you do so, then people will say, all right, they beat a good team. Maybe they're better off, and they just had a tough calendar and a tough break because they didn't get any penalties called for them against other team. One of the few in MLS this year that didn't get a penalties because it's penalties galore. But yeah, so that happened. For Vancouver, not too bad though. I said they lost 3-0. I still see some potential with that team. Maybe I'm not critical enough of that team, and a lot of people are panicking in Vancouver and somewhere else. But I'm always like, well, I see good things happening. I see some movement. I see potential, and I see 2-3 weeks down the road, Vancouver is starting to be better than we anticipated. For Montreal, I hope it's going to be the case. I still don't know. I think the arrival of Blair and Zamali can't come soon enough. I think they need an offensive spark with the injury of Nacho Piatti. Hopefully Piatti is back sooner rather than later, because for one game, Balutabla was able to replace him, and he did very well as well against LA on Saturday. Maybe Montreal's best player once again. But you cannot rely on Balutabla, and you need maybe both of them on the field together to have that offensive spark that we kind of want to see from Montreal. Toronto 2, Atlanta 2. For Toronto, a game at home where they saw Javinko score. They saw a great threat. Mastomaro scored the second goal for Toronto. But Atlanta was able to, Altiba scored 2 goals. Atlanta was dangerous. Almiron was able to pinpoint pass the ball wherever he wanted. Got the through ball for Altiba's second goal. Atlanta's second goal. It was beautiful. Atlanta's playing in a very, very beautiful brand of soccer. They're fun to watch. They seem confident. They do not look like an expansion side. They look grizzled. They look like veterans, and they look like they are enjoying the process. Hey, that's like that's a timely reference for you. But the process seems to work for Atlanta, and that could be dangerous for Montreal. We'll be back tomorrow on Soccer Today with the World Cup 2026 joint bid special with Tom Marshall and Jonathan Tannenwald. Make sure you join us tomorrow, 10 a.m. And until then, today, 2 p.m., you have the actual press conference of that joint bid. We'll take a look Follow us on Twitter at Kev Laramee and at Soccer Today SPN. And until tomorrow, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.